What's up, guys? Today in the shop build episode number 2, we're going to take this concrete pad and turn it into welcome to the shop. Yeah, super corny, but I'm very excited for the shop, and this whole building process went actually a lot smoother than I thought it would. We are using the VersaTube kit, which is a DIY kit, something that you can do yourself. That's the whole point of this build series, is the DIY shop, and we use the VersaTube. For us, it got delivered. They moved the pallets off of the trailer onto my driveway. The first thing we did was we actually went through and made sure we got all the pieces, which we did not get all the pieces, and it made me very upset when we didn't get the pieces because they were missing 2 of the most important pieces, which is what you actually start building with, which is the base contact pieces, which actually get bolted to the ground. Now, I sent them a few emails, I called them, and they actually had them delivered within about 4 days, which is not that bad. So, you know, for customer service stuff, they actually did really well making sure that they got me taken care of as fast as possible. Now let's start with the actual build process, right? The build process is, like I said, laying out the base pieces around the entire concrete, which will be bolted into, for me, 30-inch footers. Use 8-inch redhead anchors that get drilled into the ground, so you will need, if you're doing something like this, a very powerful power drill or hammer drill, because we definitely burned out through our hammer drill combos. I suggest renting one, or if you have one, great. But you bolt all the pieces all around the shop, the entire shop, into the ground. Once the base pieces are anchored into the concrete, it's time to build the trusses. The trusses you build all individually, and then for us, it took 4 of us, 2 on each side, to lift them up and set them onto each base piece. We worked from the front to the back and got each piece in. If you look at this back wall, it's very different since it's the exterior wall. That is very different than the normal trusses. So we built the trusses and then did the front and the back wall after. Once the trusses are all in place, you need to connect them all so that they're not just free floating on the base. For the VersaTube, they use these and they're called hat channels. I know that some people on Instagram told me that they're also called purlins, but in the VersaTube, they're actually called the hat channels, so that's just what they call them. So these hat channels screw to every single truss. So you have different sections that already have the proper measurement, so you can kind of just line them up, figure out where they go, screw them in, and it took us no cutting. You know, we didn't have to actually go through and cut them all. It was just already pre-cut. Now there's 4 layers of hat channels on each side that you take care of. Up top, there's 7 on each side, and that is what the roof will be screwed to. Now for our shop, we have 2 windows, 3 doors, and you have to frame that out. So the instructions all had exactly where we need to place it, so it really wasn't too difficult to go through, make sure it frames out, make sure it fits. We put the windows in, screwed it all in, and we were done with that. And moving on to the doors, it was the same thing. You frame out the doors. Now you do have to cut out the base piece for the door, or you have a step that's another 2 inches tall, which just to me is a tripping hazard. Didn't want that. So we cut it out with our circular saw and a metal cutting wheel. We put the doors in, screwed it all in, made sure it was square, and they are now good to go. After the windows and doors are completely installed, it's time to move on to the siding. So we started with this wall over here. Now this first panel actually didn't need cut at all. It was perfectly 3 feet from the end, which worked out nice. And we installed this piece of siding first. Now you screw on each hat channel, which you need to make sure you have level so you don't miss the siding at all. You go through and you mark where it's at, and you screw each hole next to a major rib. You do that for every hat channel up, so you have 4 rows of screws. Now we did all ours on this side of the hat channel, so when you're at my house looking down, you actually don't see any of the screws except for 1 per panel, because you have to double up as you go down when you overlap the panels. So we start on this side of the building because as we go down, you didn't want to see that overlapping line from the new siding. It just doesn't look as good, and when you're looking from the house this way, that's where most people are going to be looking at my shop. I wanted to look as seamless as possible. So we started on the back end, worked our way in. You have to measure out, make sure you cut every piece perfect around the windows and doors. Sometimes you miss a hat channel and you have a little hole, but that's okay. You know, as you move down, this whole part, when we didn't have to cut anything, was very simple. They just throw up, you screw it in, keep moving forward, and everything lined up really good. So after both sides are done, we moved on to the front. Still very similar. These ones, you start in the middle and you work your way out. It made it really easy to do, but make sure that it lined up the rib on the main beam on the inside. Now this VersaTube, how it's set up is they give you extra long panels, and then you have to go back and cut the entire top off on both sides. What that'll do is just make sure that when you put your trim on it, it's perfect and that you can kind of have some room to adjust, which made it a lot easier. Now it was difficult to actually cut a straight line, but we got it done and it looks really good. After the front was done, you move on to the back and do the exact same process. After the siding was all complete, we moved on to the roof. This was a 10-hour process, a 10-hour day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We worked on the roof. It was exhausting, especially when you choose a color that's charcoal. That makes it even harder. Now the roofing is a little different because you have to put the insulation underneath the roof panels, which makes life a little more difficult to know exactly where you're screwing into. So you really have to be careful, take your time, make sure you hit all the hat channels, especially on the roof, because you don't want water leaking in. And the roof, you know, that's where water would leak in. So don't miss your hat channels is the key, which putting up the roof hat channels, it would help you a lot if you make sure it's straight. Ours weren't all straight. Luckily, we made it work. We figured out a process on how to do that. So the roofing process, besides the insulation, is very similar to the siding. It's not super difficult. It's just time consuming. You want to make sure you are consistent on all the ones that you're hitting and make sure that there's no holes, like I said. But for the most part, it's just a laborious process. Other than that, it went together way smooth. I've done shingles before, and this was way better than shingles. After all the roof panels are installed, you have a 18-inch cap that goes in the middle of it, so that way water runs off on the top, hits the siding or the roofing, and then comes off the side. So we installed that, got that completely down, made sure it was straight, and we moved on to the trim. So for the trim, it's the same exact color as the roofing. It's this charcoal color. They're just big caps that come on this side. You just screw them into the hat channels all the way up. It worked out really nice. They look really good. Then you have trim that comes on the side, which you have to cut and bend. Make sure that you don't puncture it because you want to make sure it's solid on the peak so there's no leaking. And we bent that, got where it needed to, trimmed everything off there. And then you have some side trim that goes underneath the small eave all the way down that you also put, and then you have these foam pieces that go in between underneath that trim and above to make sure no bugs or anything gets in there as well. And also it helps insulate it. The few things I didn't do in this shop, obviously the concrete, if you watched the last episode, and then the garage door being one of them. I've helped fix a garage door before, never installed anything like that. I figured it's gonna be way easier just to call somebody, and I'd rather them do it while I'm getting other things done. So they came in, installed the garage door, turned out really nice. It is insulated, so when we finish putting all the other insulation in, the Utah winters won't affect us nearly as bad. Now, the other thing that I went through and I got done by a professional, which I suggest you do as well if you want to do a DIY shop, is your electrical. Make sure that you just hire somebody out. You don't want to blow yourself up, burn down a house, or do it wrong. So just hire somebody to do this. Now, we will be doing the lights, we'll be doing the outlets, we'll be doing everything like that. But get somebody to at least put the power from your main to your shop and or your garage or whatever you plan on doing, because yeah, you don't want to make a mistake, burn down your house. That's just no good. So that's what we did. We hired somebody. We were smart. Well, that's basically it. The DIY shop is at least up. A lot of work to do. We got insulation to put, power. We got to build the back office, which will be the next step. We have a lot to do still, but it is a functional shop with power, which is just awesome. If you guys want to listen to a more in-depth process of me doing it and more updates, go follow the Go Build Something podcast. I do it with 2 other builders. They're awesome. Make sure you go subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We're on all the podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all those. You can listen to us, the Go Build Something podcast. Make sure you subscribe. We have a lot of episodes coming out, and check out all the other projects here on the channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. See you next time.